How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of The Tim Show. In the last episode, we talked about the first volume in the Sword Art Online series, the beginning of the very first arc for the series titled Aincrad, and today we will be talking about the second light novel in the series, which also takes place in the Aincrad arc, but also kind of the first book already wrapped it up. What we're going to be talking about today is the second volume in the series, but what the second volume is, it's still Sword Art Online Aincrad, but we get some additional stories of what was going on while Kirito was trapped in the world of Aincrad and SAO. And we get to see some more characters that he interacted with that, really changed his adventure, from different points. Which I'm actually kind of surprised that the author didn't take this book and just mash it together with the first one, because then you would have a pretty long book. But at the same time, though, it would make more sense. It would give Kirito a lot more character development, because there's also a story in this book that is briefly mentioned towards the ending of the first volume, which I will go over a little bit today, but kind of like what I said before, guys, don't expect, I'm not spoiling like every single piece of information from this book. I'm going to go over all the main stuff that happens, because what we have in here is 4 stories. We have 4 little stories in this big book, and the book itself is not that long. It wraps up at about 244 pages, but we've got 4 individual stories here of people that Kirito interacted with on his adventure through different times while he was in Aincrad. So I'm going to do the same thing like I did in the last one. I'm going to review it. I'll give it a grade afterwards. I'll talk about what I liked and, what kind of generally happens in these stories. We'll wrap it up and so on and so forth. So I think it's about time that we start by reading a short little summary of what we can expect in this book. So I'm holding the book right now. You guys can purchase it at any local bookstore or Amazon.com. It is available. And these books are actually really not that expensive at all. They're actually really dirt cheap. So I recommend buying it, but let's get started. Linked up and logged into the deadly VMMORPG Sword Art Online in both the real and virtual worlds, Kirito is stuck in a hell of one man's making, and like everyone else, unable to escape until the game is beaten. But while some players are crippled by fear and others throw themselves into completing the game, still others relax into everyday life in the face of their cruel predicament, and live to the best of their ability, laughing, crying, but always enjoying the game. Among these are 4 women who make a mark upon the solo adventurer that Kirito has become: Silica, the beast tamer; Lisbeth, the blacksmith; Yui, the mysterious orphan; and the tragic Sachi, never to be forgotten by the black swordsman. So like this book says, Kirito meets 4 women in this book that really kind of change his life. Well, I would say honestly, realistically, he meets 2 friends. One story is a little bit, I find it weird, but it's not really weird at all, so don't expect any craziness out of this. And then there is one that is a very big tragedy, but it definitely does shape his character and what he kind of like takes with him as he progresses through these books. So as much as I do kind of want to go about this in chronological order from like episode wise, well then again, yeah, you know what? Screw it. I'm going over through, I'm going to talk about these in chronological order from technically of what the anime does. So the first girl that we're going to talk about is Sachi. So Kirito ends up befriending a group of players that want him to join their group because he's a very strong player. And one of these players is a character named Sachi. She's not very much of a fighter, and she's actually really scared of what kind of environment she's in. And over the course of time, Kirito lets her know that, no matter what happens, I will protect you. But, your group, while the group really wants to advance and be on the front lines and fight the bosses like everybody else, they have really, really low levels. And Kirito is actually hiding his level from them. Kirito is about, at this point, I think he's at like level 40. And the players that he is with, they're only at level 20. And so he kind of keeps it a secret from him because at this point in time in the story, Kirito is known as a beater. Well, one, he's a solo player, but he's also known as a beater. They don't really express this in the first novel, but they do mention it in the anime, so I'll give you guys a little clarification. Kirito was a beta tester. He was able to play Sword Art Online before anybody else, and he knows a lot of secrets. And because of an unfortunate accident that happened at the first floor boss room, they were accusing him of being a cheater and a beater at the same time, so these people just made up the word beater, which is what Kirito is. But he decided to call himself that because he didn't want to put anybody else in danger or be worried about people that could essentially die on his watch. So he took up the name of beater and yada, yada, yada. And this one is probably the biggest spoiler one for the story because, I mean, you guys could probably tell, and just from the back of the book that I mentioned, this is a tragic story about Sachi and her friends. So I think I'm going to kind of end it off talking about her right now because, again, I don't want to spoil everything for you guys, but I think that's definitely a story that I think you guys should read. It's very tragic, but it definitely plays a big part in Kirito's development as a character. But just to give a little bit more information, so he decides to join up with this group that Sachi's in, and they decide to level up. He's having, actually a good time. He's okay about it. But then, after the group gets a little cocky, they want to go and explore, harder levels. They want to get more experience and get more money. And that's where I'll kind of end it there for Sachi. It's a tragedy of what happens to her character. But, I mean, it's just one of those little elements that the author does. It is a sad part of the story. Okay, so now let's go next down the line. We're going to talk about Silica. Silica is known as the Beast Tamer or Dragon Tamer. Actually, no, I think the proper title is Beast Tamer. My apologies. She is known as a Beast Tamer, and she has a little blue dragon that you guys can actually see at the top left of the thumbnail from where you're watching this. And the dragon's name is Pina. And after Silica gets into a little bit of a tussle with some enemies out in the woods, Pina actually ends up, unfortunately, dying. Spoiler, sorry, but then again, that's just the beginning of the story, so that's okay. Unfortunately, Pina ends up dying, but he leaves behind a little feather for Silica, and Kirito comes in to save her. And Kirito explains to Silica that it's okay if you can reach this specific item within 3 days' time, you will be able to save Pina. And Kirito goes on an adventure with Silica to try and get this mysterious item and to try and save Pina. And then there's a little bit of a bigger plot that goes into that. But what's actually heartwarming about this story is that it's plainly obvious that Silica has a crush on Kirito, but it's more meaningful because she actually does kind of see him as like a big brother. And the anime and even the book too really do a good job of like showing that off, and it's actually a really cute story. But yeah, there's also a little bit of a little plot that's inside that story that I don't want to spoil, but it's very good. It's a very sweet story. And now we're going to move on to another one of my favorite characters in this series. We're going to be talking about Lisbeth. Lisbeth is a blacksmith. She is a weapons maker. She loves making all types of weapons. And Asuna tells Kirito of Lisbeth because Kirito is looking for another sword that is stronger than the one he has right now. I don't know if you guys can make it on the thumbnail, but if you look back at the previous video, you can see that Kirito is wielding a black sword, and he has like a greenish, bluish sword on his other hand. That is the one that Liz actually makes for him. But when Kirito goes in to meet her, he says, I'm looking for a sword that's, is probably stronger or is equal strong as the one I have right now. Because apparently the sword that Kirito has is a very strong magic type sword that is dropped by, it's kind of like a rare drop by enemies. So Liz tells him that well, at first she's going over in her shop all of the good swords that she has made, and she gives one of the swords for Kirito to like examine to see if he likes it. And then Kirito decides to test the durability of the sword, and taking Liz's sword and smashing it on his own, and it ends up breaking Liz's sword, and she gets really pissed. And I actually took one of the scenes from that moment at the top right of the thumbnail, so you guys could see how mad she was when Kirito broke her sword. So now she tells Kirito that the only way that he's going to get a sword that's as strong as the one he has is if he finds this rare metal in this ice level that's guarded by like an ice dragon. And then Kirito and Lisbeth go on this grand adventure to try and find the metal, and so Kirito can get a sword. But there are some little things, but moving on, they end up finding, that metal, and it turns out that there is another little plot that I don't want to spoil, but it's kind of adorable, but I feel really bad for Liz. But they end up finding the metal, and they make actually no, what am I kidding? You can actually, the sword, if you guys look again at the thumbnail, the design of the sword that Liz makes is going through the word online, and the sword's name is actually a dark repulsor, a very powerful sword that Kirito uses. And hence, from the first book, that's essentially when Kirito, really becomes the dual wielding swordsman. And that's really pretty much it for Lisbeth. There are a couple details I want to leave out just for surprise purposes. And now we move on to the one character that annoys me a little bit in the series, but unfortunately, she does play a very big role in this series for what she does. And that is the character of Yui. So, again, I guess I think this is probably the biggest spoiler one. So I'm just going to tell you guys right now. Spoiler alert, there are some big stuff. There are going to be some big spoilers I'm going to be dropping with talking about this character. So if you don't want to hear, I implore you to read the books or check out the anime and come back. And then you'll be able to hear what I say. So I'll be going into spoiler territory in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Austin and Kirito end up getting married in the game. And while they're enjoying their honeymoon, they end up going for a walk, and they find this mysterious girl that just passes out in the woods, and they take her in. The girl looks like she can be in she's like in grade school and whatnot. So Kirito and Asuna decide to take her in to try and find her parents, and this girl, whose name is Yui, thinks that Kirito and Asuna are her parents. And, Kirito and Asuna decide to raise her as if, they were her parents. It's a sweet thing. It's a sweet gesture, but it's just, for some reason, it's just weird to me. But anyway, they try and explore different areas of Aincrad to try and find out where her real parents could possibly be. And it turns out that Yui has a pretty big secret. She is actually the cardinal of the game. And to further explain that, she is kind of the one who's in charge of the game that makes sure that players, I guess, are getting fairly treated in the game. Like, if there's a problem, that she can go and try and help them, and she has some administrative privileges so she can, adjust things in the game and whatnot. And Kirito and Asuna kind of find this out about her towards, the end of her story. But she is actually one of those big... I think what annoys me is she has this really big, high-pitched voice, and it's I don't know. It just kind of freaks me out a little bit. But I mean, she's still a great character in the show. But to Kirito and Asuna, they've pretty much adopted her as their daughter and whatnot. But okay, that's good. Future parents, yay. But yes, she has access to information. She can change things within the game, but some things happen. Not going to go into spoiler territory, but you can kind of get my point. But she does show up later in this series a lot to really try and help Kirito and his friends uncover many different mysteries that they're seeking, especially the one story arc we're on right now, which I will get to probably way later down when we talk about this series. And I think she'll probably be heavily they're probably, I think with this final arc that they're planning on introducing for this series, I think she's going to have a really big role in it. But time will tell. We're still months away from here in the North America getting that first book of the final arc. So I'm actually really quite curious to know how that is going to work. But we'll just have to wait and see then. So anyway, yeah, that is pretty much Volume 2 of Sword Art Online, Aincrad. This is the final book in the Aincrad story, which doesn't really have a beginning or an end. Like I said, it's just a compilation of stories and adventures that Kirito had during his time at Aincrad. But since there are many stories that the author could tell, he decided to put it in another book. So we have some more side stories. But after this, we will be moving on to more of the different arcs going forward, because we won't be going into we won't be talking about side stories within the series until about I think it's volume 8 or 7. I think it's volume 8 or 7 where we'll kind of dive back into some side stories with the characters. And I mean, I'm sorry that I wanted to make this longer, but that's really all like this book is. It's just the side stories they have. But I will say, though, it was still great to see Kirito interact with more people. There are some really great stories to listen to in this one, with some tragedy. But again, that's with the character development and what he goes through. But it's still a pretty good read overall. And especially if you like, the world that Kirito is in, the world of Aincrad, then there's definitely something to enjoy with experiencing more adventures. And even though I say this is the last time that we'll kind of see of Aincrad, there are actually 2 other side stories that we will... Actually, no, maybe actually 3. Aincrad's not in the title of the book, but we will be returning to the world of Aincrad in another volume later down the road with some even more side stories that were put into the anime before that they were released here in the United States. But for as of right now, where we are going in my review of this series, we will be moving on to a whole bunch of more story arcs, and a lot of them that I'm really excited to be talking about. But even then, this is still a really good read. I really recommend you guys buy it. And I'm going to give Volume 2 of Sword Art Online Aincrad, I'm going to give it a B. I don't think it's as good as the first book, because then again, that one was like really plot heavy and really more intense, because, that was telling the beginning of Aincrad and the ending of Aincrad. But this is just all stuff that takes place in the middle. But still a good read overall, and I do recommend it. But we won't be returning to the world of Aincrad for a little while, so I am sorry about that, guys. But then again, you guys can pick this up at your local bookstore, Amazon right now. These books are not expensive at all, and I highly recommend it. And the next time that we jump back into the Sword Art Online series, we are going to be talking about Volume 3 with the Fairy Dance arc. And that is a pretty interesting arc, too. A lot of people give it a lot of hate, but I actually like it. I think it's a really good arc. And, that arc is split between 2 books, so we'll talk about the first half next time. And I will say that you guys can probably expect another new episode this Thursday. I have to work 3 days in a row, and I won't be able to really have time to make a video for you guys, so I do apologize. But please expect a new episode on Thursday. I do have something else I want to talk about, but then again, I actually really do want to keep, the Sword Art Online train rolling. So I may just go ahead and jump ahead to Volume 3. So, yeah, I think I might do that. It'll be a nice surprise when it shows up. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I really did. It's great talking about this series and these characters. I love it. I can't wait to talk more about this. Like this podcast video, leave a comment letting me know if there's anything you guys want me to talk about. Maybe there's some more movie news that needs to be covered and I can talk about it. Or if you're anxiously looking forward to the next Kingdom Hearts review, I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. So thank you all so much, and I will see you next time.